It's a free-for-all. It's it's a free entry for them, so they can assess for themselves with this kind of rather cheap but effective equipment our state of on readiness when it comes to having a presence and having a capacity to assert our sovereignty over that particular region.
A retired Canadian Forces colonel says the discovery of Chinese buoys by Canadian forces in the Arctic should be a wake-up call. The Department of Defense says it's taking all appropriate measures to safeguard our sovereignty, but retired Colonel Drapeau says the Canadian Forces' capacity in the far north is far from ideal.
It's limited, very, 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 very limited. We only have a handful of regular forces deployed in the Arctic. We only have very periodic flights whose purpose is to show our presence and our sovereignty.
A veteran with 34 years in the forces, Drapeau says while the physical infrastructure developed during the Cold War is still there, it needs refurbishment and support. He notes that as summers become milder, Arctic waters will be less impassable than before, and he says it's not surprising a nation like China could be evaluating Canada's readiness in the far north. Drapeau recommends the development of a dedicated regiment of Arctic soldiers, primarily drawn from First Nations residents already in the far north.
As a minimum, we need to have ground forces, which is probably the cheapest to equip and to be able, in fact, to train and be able to be there and to show that we actually care.
Drapeau says while the Canadian Rangers are a valuable unit, they rely on outdated equipment and don't have the same capacity as regular soldiers. Aaron Shull from the Centre for International Governance Innovation says at the very least, Canada must be aware that the global situation now requires more alertness.
There's intellectual property theft, there are cyber attacks, there's economic competition, there's human rights concerns, there's influence operations, there's issues with respect to our supply chain, to say nothing of the war in the Ukraine. So without a doubt, we're now in a position where hostile state actors are much more aggressive than we've seen in previous years.
We have to remember that Canada is investing almost $40 billion in NORAD modernization and continental defense. What that means is that over the next number of years, we are going to upgrade our defensive capabilities on this continent. We are going to be building a new Northern Approaches surveillance system to replace the North Warning System.
In Ottawa, Xiao Li, City News.